All right.
Hey,
Welcome. Welcome to the first episode of Thrive After 40. So, my name's Keith, and I am one of the podcast hosts, my co host, Lou. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Lou?
okay. I am Lou Fratto. I am a physical therapist and longevity specialist, and I am one of the owners of Delray Care Physical Therapy. We are a concierge physical therapy and active longevity clinic in Delray Beach, Florida. And I have been a physical therapist now for 26 years, almost 27. But, as I was preparing for this, I started thinking I've actually been studying and kind of in some ways part of the health and wellness um, realm for over 40 years. I started reading and researching this stuff back when I was a teenager. And I was actually a personal trainer back before they were called personal trainers. My that's how long ago it was. My local gym hired me to basically train their clients in personal training, and so I've been a personal trainer, or not. I was a personal trainer back when I was a teenager. So anyway, I have been in this game, you should say, for a very, very long time. And I did forget to tell you. You asked me to say something about jujitsu because I think that is an important part of who I am, and it does shape me. I'm a brown belt at jujitsu, and I've been doing it off and on for a total of 9 years. So, um, the reason I think it does apply is because it's an activity that I really enjoy, but
Hmm.
it's an intense activity, and it's kind of like if you took a snapshot of life and you turned up the volume and you put it under a microscope. And what I realized is that a lot of the things that help a person train in jujitsu safely after the
Hmm.
age of 40 and then stay in jujitsu up through 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s are the same things that apply to thriving in life as you age as well. And so it's kind of my own little lab, if you will.
Yeah.
I've tried different things and I see how they work, and then it gives me feedback, and then I can kind of modify it for how it works in life. Different supplements or different sleep schedules or different um,
Yeah.
approach, ego, like we've talked about, that kind of stuff. So, um,
Yeah. Well, I'm
it,
sure like those are things we're going to definitely get into as we
yeah,
go through this. Like, what are the things we're doing inside and outside of gym and other physical practices and how do they align? But real quick, back up for a second. So
okay,
I'm going to introduce myself as well before we get into the meat of it. So I'm Keith Collegia. I've been doing CrossFit for about 20 years, around 20 years. About 13 years ago, I went in with some partners. Two of them were the trainers at my old gym, and we opened a gym in Atlanta called CrossFit Terminus. And that business is still going, and I'm still a partner there and still going strong. So
that's,
hopefully
that's
that will
awesome.
continue. Yeah.
What
And
was
then,
your? Do you remember? Sorry, Keith, to interrupt you. Do you remember what your inspiration was to starting CrossFit in the first place?
yeah. Oh, yeah. I have a very acute event that happened where I was in a situation where I was throwing my back out about once a year, just trying to do normal things like yard work. And um, my kids were young, and I had an incident where my back went out really bad while we were on a car trip. And when I got back, I made a decision, that once I got over that incident, took about 3 months, that I was going to do something because I would go to the doctor and he would say, there's nothing really structurally wrong with you. It's just you're weak, basically. And so that's what got me into it. And then there's a whole nother backstory about how I started with my neighbor as kind of my accountability buddy. Um, but maybe that's something we can explore in a upcoming episode as we kind of go through this. But those
No.
origin stories are pretty fundamental, I think, important to what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I think it's cool too that it's basically a kind of like the thing we'll probably be leaning on heavily, and that's being proactive and
Yep.
doing something about it and not just hoping for the best and sitting back.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. All right, let's do a little background to get up to speed on exactly why we're here and who we are and how we know each other. So, um, my recollection is we literally met on the first day of college.
Yeah.
Moving into the dorm, we ran into each other, literally bringing furniture and things up into our rooms, and that was a summer semester. So we were next door neighbors over that entire summer, and you and your roommate, my and me and my roommate, and we kind of started to realize we had similar interests and had a group of friends that kind of congregated between our two rooms. That fall, we joined the same fraternity where we played some sports together and basically went through pledging together, became friends, um, and went through some other crazy stuff together. Um, yeah, keep that
Yeah.
for another
I
day.
have the same memory, and thank you for being kind to me and not describing what I was wearing the first day you met me and my hairstyle and what I
Well,
was carrying in
we'll
my
see how
arms.
this goes. I mean, in future episodes, maybe I'll dig up some of those
Oh god, old
some of
pictures?
that evidence from the past. Yeah. Um, yeah.
That's
But
funny.
since college, we have not lived in the same city,
Right.
but we've seen each other and stayed friends. I guess from a distance. I mean, we've seen each other at weddings, and when we went through that phase where we were getting married and a lot of our friends were getting married, there were kind of events that would bring us together. But there was a quite a stretch there where the most communication I think we were doing was occasional phone calls, text chains, social media, right?
Yeah.
And I don't remember how long ago it was now that I think that the first time maybe we got back together was a group. Was it at the fraternity reunion that we had recently, or
As a
was there a
group,
football game before that?
I guess our core well, we've seen each other for football games
Oh,
before
that's
that, but
right. We also went to the beach that one time on that.
yeah, I think not it wasn't anything regularly planned until the reunion, then we started, realizing, "Hey, this" I guess we started putting a little more effort into staying in touch. We really
Yeah.
could have could have put a lot more effort into it looking back on it. But
Yeah.
here's an interesting fact that I remember, that I'm not sure if you knew this, but back in 1992, you sent me my very first email. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
So we were talking on the phone, and I remember telling you that I had just gotten a computer that had a modem. It had like the 2400 baud modem,
Oh my
the
god.
slowest possible. And you were like, "Yeah, I've got one too." And I said, "Hey, do you have this thing called email?" And you go, "Yeah." And I go, "Hey, send me one. Let's see what happens." And you sent it, and it seemed like it took overnight, but it came in and it just said something like, "Hey," and that was it.
It would have been faster to actually mail you a letter.
Yeah. It was my very first email was yours.
Wow.
Yep.
That is quite a piece of trivia. I could not for the life of remember who sent me my first one, but that's funny.
Yeah, you were
That's
already a
really
little
cool.
bit ahead of the game. You had already done it a few times,
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
helped me
Yeah.
out. You brought me
An
into
old pro.
the new technology.
And you came to Atlanta a couple times, didn't you? Or at least
Yeah,
once?
definitely once. Yep, there was
Okay.
some kind of music festival that we all went to.
Yep, I remember that. I think it was Music Midtown. So,
I think Sublime played, and that's back when Sublime was really
wow.
really big, like in the 90s. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good segue into kind of why why we're here and why we're calling this Tribe After 40. But I think just, a little bit more kind of the origin story. So last year when you and I and some other friends got together for a football game, we were started having conversations just about life and where we were. And since I had been involved with CrossFit for a long time and you had your physical therapy practice, some of those conversations started to, I think, highlight ways that we were thinking about our own fitness, but then also like how we were feeling about looking ahead and how a large part of what we were trying to do was to ensure that we could do whatever we could to keep ourselves healthy and hopefully fit and really get the most out of, whatever, how many decades we have left. Um, and that I think kind of sparked some ideas, but then really what led to, I think, us getting together and trying to do this little project is you sent out a link to the book that you wrote. And at the time, I don't know if you were in the middle of writing that book when we saw each other, but you didn't really mention it. It kind of took me by surprise. So I ordered a copy of it, read it. A lot of our friends have read it. And then that led to a conversation of saying, well, I kept texting you and saying, this aligns a lot with what I've learned or the way that I think, or I really like the way that you've expressed certain ideas in it. And that focus on trying to help your patients and, you know, us help ourselves be prepared for thriving as we continue to get older led to the idea to just have some discussions about it and put it down and create a podcast or some videos. So
Yeah.
that's my recollection of kind of how we got here.
Yeah, I totally would agree with that, and it's kind of amazing that, but not, it's amazing. But then at the other side of the coin, it's not surprising that we've just continued on parallel journeys. Because
Right.
why not? I mean, we thought a lot alike back then, and we still think alike now. So
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So this is going to be at least a start. Call it a limited series podcast, focusing primarily on your book, which is called Thrive, and we'll put a link to that in the description and other ways that people can get it. And really, we're going to break down the topics that you cover in the book one by one. I think you call them levers for things that you can do to try and thrive as you get older. And the book's not necessarily only for people that are 40 and over, but it sounds like that's really who you had in mind as you were writing the book and maybe where you think your main focus is from a practice standpoint for your physical therapy practice at this point. Is that right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've my entire physical therapy career, quarter of a century or whatever, has been down in South Florida. And so if you know anything about the demographics of South Florida, you cannot have a business without having a large portion of your clients or customers or patients being, 65 and over. So I have a lot of experience in, working with people who are middle aged and older. Yeah, I mean, some of this is just the fact that I'm not a spring chicken. I'm, in my late 50s, so I'm closer to 60 than I am 50. And
Right.
so it's my world right now. It's where I live, and
Yeah.
I've always been a student of human behavior or human what happens to the body and how and I'm always introspective, like, wow, why did that make me sore and this didn't, or why is my body reacting this way or not? And
Yeah.
so, it was just a natural evolution to kind of move into longevity, which there's more of a backstory to that too. But it was a natural thing for me now that I'm in my late 50s as well.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, before we dive into kind of the meat, and this is going to be an introduction podcast, at least this first episode, so we can talk a little bit about the background, specifically about the book. But we wanted to do a little disclaimer to say that we're not professional athletes, we're not MDs. I'm not a coach. I'm not a certified coach at CrossFit, but we're just a couple of guys who've been involved, with the health and fitness in some form or fashion for quite a long time. We've got a lot of collective experience, you with patients in your practice and jujitsu training that you've done and other things, and myself in the CrossFit community. And these discussions are really just meant for educational and entertainment purposes, right? This is not medical advice. So we
Perfect.
wanted to get
Perfect.
that clear. I think the other piece that I just wanted to say briefly is this is not sponsored content. So if we talk about a book or a product or a service or something, it's because we have personal experience with that product. We're not being paid promotion, at least not yet.
Yeah.
Unless
No,
somebody wants
sounds
to
good.
reach out and sponsor us. So
Right.
cool.
Nike, we're here.
Yeah. Who are the ones that probably more like Medic Alert?
Yeah.
um, anyway. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to talk a little bit about the book, the why behind the book. So, what I'd like to know is, what is What was the actual experience of deciding to write this book after like 26 years of being in practice? Why now?
Okay.
Um,
I got to tell you. All right. So the real catalyst for, look, I've always wanted to write a book,
yeah.
about this stuff, about health and wellness or something along those realms. Um, because I've just thought, for a long time I known a lot about this stuff, and how can I reach more people? Okay, write a book, and that way I can help more people than just the people that come in and see me at the clinic. But the real catalyst was when my daughter left for college.
Mm,
So I've always thought of myself as a pretty well-rounded person. Yes, I was hugely devoted to her and being the best father I could be, but I also felt like I had other interests, and that I didn't derive my identity solely from being her father. Okay, so when she left, yes, it was sad at first, and since we only have one child, it was like ripping the Band-Aid off. All of a sudden,
yeah.
she's gone, and the empty nest syndrome hit me harder than I thought it would. I was like, wow, this is really weird, because you do spend their entire childhood and teenage years as everything revolves around them,
Yeah.
to a large extent, and then all of a sudden they're gone, and it
Right.
was like, whoa, this is. And so I got introspective about it, and I started thinking, and I went, you know what? Well, okay, so this is going to give me time to do things that maybe I haven't had time to do before, such as write a
Yeah.
book. And I also thought to myself, literally, why does society say my last 30 years have to be my worst? Why can't they be my best?
Yep.
And so then I said, okay, well, you know what? I need to learn even more about aging and longevity and continuing to thrive as you age. And so I dove heavily into research and researching all about longevity, and read all the research, combed through all the research, read the longevity books at the time, 5 years, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that were, like tomes, and
Yep.
sifted through but they had a lot of unnecessary scientific jargon in them,
Mhm.
and so I sifted through all those, and anyway, that's another whole story, but that was it, that was the catalyst that pushed me to finally do it, was having a little more time and then saying, "Well, why not?" Like, now's the time, now, no time like the present.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really common kind of realization. I think what's uncommon is maybe not uncommon, but difficult is turning that into action. I think a lot of people probably have that same realization like, why can't my next 30 years be great? But it's that research bit and then putting that into practice with habits, which is another one of your levers that we'll probably talk about later. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really interesting. All right. So, still in the introduction, I guess, part early in the book, you introduced this concept of health span
Yeah.
compared to lifespan. And I know that's not an original concept. I mean, that's
No.
something that there's plenty of research on. But can you talk about how this kind of inspired you to develop the levers, which become the chapters in the book that you base everything on? What was that like?
Yeah, I guess it was a good way to sort of frame it, it's kind of like the quote, you want to add not only years to your life, but life to your years. And so it was a
Mhm.
more academic way of saying that. And I think that one of the good things that has come out of this new emphasis on longevity is the term health span. Maybe it was
Yeah.
around before, but they're certainly now talking about it a lot more. And so the idea literally is that the years that you live in relatively good health, you want to try to make that equal to the years that you live. And so you want to try to, in a perfect world, compress all of your illness to the very end so that you're
Mhm.
living fully, literally right up to the finish line. And then you just fall off a cliff and you're gone, but
Right.
that's a heck of, I mean, that sounds harsh, but it's a heck of a lot better than the slow,
Yeah.
decay into, phraging, which I
Right.
talk about in the book, which is where, it's my own term that I made up. At least I think I made it up. I haven't seen it anywhere else, and it's means that you decline slowly become frail, weak, and dependent. And
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants that. Nobody wants to live to be 120 if they're going to live their last 15 years, bedridden or
Yeah.
in a wheelchair or alone in a nursing home. So that's
Yeah.
the whole point. The whole point is living healthy right up to the end, as healthy as you can anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I can speak as someone who's read the book to say that that concept pretty much is the foundation for all of the chapters, how to try and approach what you do across multiple different vectors, I guess, all with that goal towards not falling into that fraging kind of decline. So I'm sure it's something that's going to come up every, in every discussion that we have. So
Right. So if health span is another word for longevity, meaning to age well, um, nothing is guaranteed, but we want to at least know and then be able to do as many of the things as we can to give us the best chance of continuing to thrive and flourish
yeah,
as we age. And so that's what I tried to do, was find those things both from experience and experience on real world people. I've had plenty of people who come in to see me in their 60s. And a lot of times, although I work on people who come and see me that are perfectly healthy, they just have a goal they want to achieve and they want to be safe in doing it and they want to, be able to do it and excel at it. A lot of people come to see me because they're in pain or they've had a surgery or injury or some kind of condition. And they come maybe in their 60s and we take care of their problem. And then in the meantime, show them ways to, continue to stay in their favorite activities as injury free and as healthy as possible. And they apply those
yeah,
things. And then they end up living in their 70s healthier than they did in their 60s. So
yeah.
it's
No, that's
doable.
great. Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I have an idea of a future episode or future discussion where I want to dig into the the elements of actually running a business and what it's like to run, your PT clinic versus what I've seen from the CrossFit side, because I think there's some interesting conversations in there about the nature of your patients and uh, clients that we have in CrossFit as well. So we'll have to come back to that at another point. But
Sounds good.
why do you think longevity is such a hot topic right now? And is it just that it's always been a discussion point, and I'm just kind of noticing it now because of the fact that I'm getting older? Or do you feel like this is a relatively new kind of focus area or phenomenon that we're seeing because there is a lot of content out there right now looking at lifespan, health span, and the topic of longevity? What's your
Yeah.
point of view on that?
Well, it's so first of all, you make a good point, and that is that definitely you and I being our late 50s now, it's definitely on our radar more probably than ever before because we're only getting older. So that is
Right.
something we should be transparent about, yes. But I think, and I, because people by looking at
I
us,
don't think we're hiding anything. Yeah.
looking at us, people think we're really young, right? But
Oh, yeah.
I, I I've said this before, and I think I have this in the book that I think it's the baby boomers. The baby boomers are a huge segment of our population, and
Yeah.
they are a powerful, proactive, take action generation. And if you think about it,
Huh.
they've made huge changes in our country with every decade in the 60s, the 70s, 80s, whatever. As they've moved through, they've made huge changes. And they're not, in my opinion, in my experience, they're not willing to go to suffer the same fate as their parents and their grandparents when it comes to
Yeah.
aging. And so they
Yeah.
want to know, hey, what can I do about this? How can I master this, if you will? How can I age better? And they're pushing the needle. But also from an economic standpoint, the if our medical system is based on fixing you as best possible after you're broken, putting a
Right.
band-aid on you after you're injured. And and I think we had talked about this before that, it's done a great job of doubling our lifespan in the last 100 years, the last century. but it
Yep.
does a horrible job with preventing fraging, and preventing
Right.
getting the chronic illnesses that are plaguing us as we get into, our older years. And if we don't fix that, we're going to get in trouble because we're not going to be able to pay for it. We're not going to be able to pay for everybody.
Right.
And how are you going to pay for everybody who ends up in nursing homes that are now costing over $90,000 a year? So it's economically being driven as well. But I don't think
Yeah.
it's coming as much from the government realizing it and trying to fix it as it is just individual people saying, "Oh my God, I got to fix my health so I don't end up broke." You know?
Like you said, you have to be the one that takes control of your destiny at some
Yes.
point because the safety net, is not really great right now.
Right. Right.
And, there's so many other areas that we'll get into as we go through these upcoming episodes where we can talk about the factors, the external factors that are actually negative forces that have to be counteracted by proactive action, by proactive things that you have to do. One of the things I know that you highlighted in some material that you gave me was almost like a warning that said, beware of quick fixes, the tech pro kind of things that are out there. And I just maybe spend a few minutes on the approach that you have taken in this book, which to me is very similar to some things that we hear from our financial advisor, which is it's simple but not easy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the things that are catching a lot of the attention are maybe things that are trying to make it look easy to push the button that provides with this kind of longevity. But can you talk a little bit about, I guess, the way that you feel like you approached it in the book versus some of those other kind of quick fix approaches that are out there?
Yeah, so you said it when you said quick fixes. I mean, let's face it, we all would love to have a quick fix for everything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that would be great. But it turns out that through my real world experience in working with real people, the quick fixes don't work,
Yeah.
and then through all the research, the same is true. And believe me, look, I hope that these treatments and techniques and procedures, I hope that some of them pan out or even most of them pan out and end up being incredible. But right now, there's weak evidence that they do anything, and they can be very expensive. And there's weak long-term data on whether they're even safe.
Yeah.
And so I found all that out through researching and looking into stuff. And so I feel like it's my part of my duty is to tell people, look, hey, hopefully that stuff or more stuff will come in the future that'll pan out. But right now, there is no quick fix. And just like in life, the basics work. They're
Yeah.
not sexy, but they are the best we've got right now. And they've been shown over years and years of research that they do tend to help you live longer and better. And those are the levers that I talk about. And again, they're the basics, and it really has to do with consistency. So they're not huge levers that you got to do dramatic things. They're small levers that you do on a consistent basis. And if you do it, and when I say consistent, I mean 80% of the time. Look, nobody can be perfect, and
Right.
nor do I think you should be, and that's another
Yeah.
discussion because you can optimize yourself right out of a good life. So I'm talking
Yep.
about most of the time, try to pull most of the levers, make the healthy decision if you can, because consistency adds up over the years. Big,
Yeah.
big.
And that's your opening to give me your tagline, your moderation tagline,
Yeah, right. So everything in moderation, including
including,
moderation,
there you go.
including moderation.
You got to finish it out, man.
I'm not sure if I have good comedic timing yet, but
I'm going to give you those openings. I'll call them out for you at first, but eventually you're going to have to
everything in
catch.
moderation, including moderation. Okay.
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go.
I,
Um, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to list every lever in the book unless you know them by heart.
let me try.
All right.
All right.
I don't
So
have them in front of me, so
okay, all right. Well, as long as I get 8, then we know I'm right.
all right.
That I've at least named all of them. I'll try to do them in order. So, and by the way, they're not in any particular order of importance,
Oh,
except for the first one. But
okay.
you could actually make a really good argument for any one of them as being the most important. I mean, you really
Yep.
could.
Yep.
And different experts lean on heavier on one versus the other. I just happen to feel like mindset is the most important. And again, that's a whole nother topic. But so mindset, then exercise and movement, nutrition, sleep, having a purpose, tech and optimization, relationships, loving relationships and emotional well-being, and then habits. So there you go.
Okay. That's awesome. Nice work.
Oh, and they're
Um,
also real quick, they're also synergistic. So the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So doing one helps another, which helps another, and vice versa.
yeah,
So
no, that makes sense. I mean, I think you're right in terms of the importance is having mindset. And so mindset is the first one that we're going to dig into, but that's going to be next episode.
yeah,
And we'll go deep on that. Maybe we'll do like one and two at the same time, or maybe we'll just focus on one. So we'll get deep into that mindset and why it's most important part of the story. You made a really good point about not striving for perfection because I think that's a sure way to fail. But finding the levers that you're going to focus on and the ones that you can maintain consistently seems to be a really good approach. That served you well. It sounds like it has served um, your patients and your clients really well. So I know one of the things that I really liked about the book is the fact that you grounded it in real stories from people that you obviously did in depth interviews with, and you share those stories throughout, and it kind of grounds it less in the realm of theory, but brings it to life in the stories that you tell in the book. So that was
yeah,
really one of the things that I really enjoyed.
yeah. Thank you. I hope that makes it a more relatable and easier read. Is actually listen to real stories and how real people have been successful or had
Yeah.
troubles with yeah. So that's kind of makes it a unique book as well that's sprinkled with a lot of stories from actual patients and what I call health heroes who are people who exemplify
Yeah.
aging and still loving life and doing the things that they love and they're stretch anywhere from their 50s all the way up to 90s, so
Yeah. No, it was inspirational after reading the stories. I'm like, man, I hope I'm that
yeah,
capable, and
yeah,
I can
yeah,
do some of the things that
right,
those folks have done. So
yeah,
that's really
it's
cool.
yeah, I was honored that they gave me the time to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it seemed like they were very giving and forthcoming in the kinds of things that they shared with you. So that was really,
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah, I owe them a lot of gratitude.
Well, you put them in your book. So they're
There you go.
memorialized forever.
Exactly. On
Uh,
the bestseller list forever.
exactly. So was there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up? I think we've been going almost 40 minutes on this.
No, I
So,
think that's I can't think of anything else unless you can.
no, I think it's been a good conversation. Our first attempt to put one of these together. And I'm hopefully that they'll continue to get better over time. But I'm looking forward to the next one where we're going to dive into that first lever mindset. Like I said, I'll put a link to Lou's book in whatever kind of descriptions and other places where we post this. And I think that's it.
Awesome.
We'll see you next time.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Keith.
All right, man. Thanks, Lou.
All right,
Bye.
take care.